Greetings and welcome to What's Wrong with Wolfie. My name is Jason.
And I'm Rich.
And I'm Chris.
And it's time for the TV shows of 1999. There you go, I didn't fuck that one up, did I? No tongue ties on this one. I'm back to being
Well
pro.
done. Well done.
Thank you. But not only were we contending with the threat of the Y2K bug in 99, but we were consoling ourselves as the end of one of the biggest UK TV shows ever, Noel's House Party, finished. And we wouldn't see another show like it until Ant and Dec took up the challenge with their Saturday night takeaway show.
How long has that been going now? At least nearly 20, surely.
Yeah, definitely longer than Noel's House Party lasted.
Gotta be.
But
PJ and Duncan when that show started.
Yeah, and pretty much, weren't they?
Because they were doing, was it SMTV Live from, was it 2000?
Yeah, at the most, yeah.
Bloody hell.
I will always be grateful, though, for Ant and Dec's Saturday Night Takeaway, just so that my children have a taste of what I had when I was growing up with Saturday Night Telly, because obviously telly now is nothing like it was when we were growing up.
I'll give them their dues. It was definitely the nearest that what has been to the heyday. Yeah, it's a low bar at this point.
Oh, yeah. There's no Mr. Blobby, so that on its own, really, but they do a good job to give some of that kind of like nice variety Saturday night TV family, stuff
give them their due, and
my kids absolutely love it.
DUIs and whatever is going on with Ant. But my question
or is it
to
Dec? No one knows.
Yeah, Ant or Dec.
One of the others.
One of them is always on the left. I can never remember which one.
Yeah. But that was not the only other TV news of the year. And with other stuff happening, we had Denise Van Houten sadly leaving the Big Breakfast and is replaced with Kelly Brook.
Unknown teenager from Kent, Kelly Brook, who'd never hosted TV ever before, and it didn't show.
No,
honest.
Not at all.
Well, something showed, but it wasn't down there.
I remember everyone at school was very excited, but
I wonder why.
It didn't. It was. I feel bad for her. It didn't. The experiment did not pay off, and she deserved better. I don't remember her getting like really, really dragged for it. Like if it was nowadays with like social media, it would have been an awful pile-on. But
she managed to make a successful career, I guess.
Yeah, she's in Piranha 3D.
There you go.
There you go.
Filming in London, Noel Edmonds was filming in London and was hit in the face with 2 custard pies and a stunt organised by a recently launched Lads magazine.
Oh, wow.
No.
Which Front magazine?
It didn't say in the article. It just said recently launched. So it'll be Lads or whatever, FHM, but I don't think
FHM and Loaded, they were going through the 90s anyway,
Nuts
weren't they?
and Zoo, like a bit later, weren't they? They weren't. They were like early 2000s, mid 2000s.
I was never really a Lad mag buyer, to be honest. I couldn't be asked for that shit. It was free on the internet. I mean, come on, guys.
This has like Louise Redknapp on it. You weren't touching it, I know. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's.
And sorry, Chris.
I remember, Chris. I remember.
Yes, name and shame. Here we go.
And I'm sorry, Chris, but you say it was free on the internet, but you had to wait half an hour for like 1 inch of the picture to load up on your 56k modem.
Yes,
it was 10p for a black and white picture on your Nokia 3310.
Yes, it was comic book guy downloading a picture of Captain Janeway, wasn't it? Yeah.
Holby City debuts on BBC One and runs for 22 odd years before being cancelled. Boo.
2 words, Claire Goose. There you go.
The Broadcasting Standards Commission.
So I'm horned up tonight, I'm sorry.
The Broadcasting Standards Commission upholds a complaint about a feature in the Teletext Games magazine Digitizer from the 26th of October 1998.
Never.
The gossip column, Gossie the Dog, had alluded to Gossie's master thrashing the talking cartoon dog with a belt. Naughty Mr. Biffo.
It's a cartoon. Come on, people. It's teletext. It's graphics.
The final episode of Grange Hill was aired on the 7th of March of this year.
Wow.
Rod Hull sadly died this year.
Oh no. From the news.
Falling off his roof,
trying
to fix his TV aerial.
Yeah.
What a sad way to go for a ledge.
Well, he shouldn't have been fixing it with the emu puppet on his arm, should he? That's
the joke, wasn't it? What did Rod Hull use to wash his clothes? Aerial and bounce.
Yeah. How are you supposed to fix an aerial with a goddamn puppet on your arm? I mean, come on.
I believe his last words were, "Fly you like a fly." But
moving on. Kelly Brook leaves the big breakfast in July.
Wow. It's like, wow.
I thought she was on it longer than that.
I thought she at least saw over a year. I'm shocked. Wow.
And is replaced by Lisa Tarbuck.
She was cool.
I'll tell you what, though. Lisa Tarbuck and Johnny Vaughan had some chemistry.
Yeah. She was fantastic.
I remember being one of those people that like, Lisa Tarbuck? Like, Jimmy's daughter? Right? And then when I watched it, I was like, actually, she's pretty damn good.
Yeah, no, they had lovely chemistry, like, really lovely chemistry.
The popular children's programme The Tweenies makes its debut on BBC Two at 10:30am and again at 3:25pm on BBC One.
The Tweenies, bloody hell.
I never got The Tweenies.
Well, we were kind of like 16 at the time, so
like
you wouldn't really.
Teletubbies, though. It's just.
No, it was like repackaged Tots TV, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, shit Tots TV. There you go.
Try wrapping your head around in the night garden. Then I still can't make no sense of that one.
No, don't, because I've got nieces and a nephew, and I have watched so many hours of In the Night Garden, and there's only 2 series of it, so it's not that many. It's always on for the past 15 years of my life visiting family down here in the Night Garden.
I'm really quite glad my children have grown up.
At least I haven't got kids of my own. At least I haven't got to watch that every single day.
Sod that.
BBC One unveils its winter lineup of programming, which will include a remake of the 1960s television series Randall and Hopkirk, Deceased, featuring Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer.
I watched this with my mum because she remembers the original, and I actually enjoyed the Vic and Bob version.
Yeah, same.
It added a bit of zany energy to it, and it was just great having those two bounce off each other with that concept. Was just a thing that should have been given more seasons, I think, to be honest.
Yeah, totally agree.
I really do.
I remember seeing some of the original, like when they used to rerun it on BBC Two. I think it was like Friday night kind of stuff. And I actually was quite excited for this when it came out. And I remember watching it quite avidly. And yeah, I liked it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, because they turned something which had a bit of irreverent British humour about it originally, but made it a bit more humorous with Vic and Bob. And I just think it worked, and I think they're again all on YouTube. I think those
crazy.
But there was plenty of other stuff happening in the TV world of 1999. But we'll be here for the whole show. So if you want to find out any more, then go search it on Wikipedia like I did. So. This episode, we take a look at 2 programmes that debuted this year in Spaced and Bits, and one which ended its original run, but it did return to our screens 10 years later, and that show is Red Dwarf. Chris, I feel like you want to christen your new microphone by blurting out all your feelings on your TV pick, so please tell the good ladies and gentlemen what that is.
My pick is Spaced.
Little Ewoks. An entire empire brought to its knees by small, furry creatures.
That's my point exactly.
Leave them alone.
Brian, did you notice that everything that transpired in those 3 films, and I mean everything, can be attributed to the actions of one very minor character?
Who?
The gunner on the Star Destroyer at the beginning of the first film.
How come?
Well, because if the gunner had shot the pod that C-3PO and R2 were in, they wouldn't have got to Tatooine, they wouldn't have met Luke, Luke wouldn't have met Ben, they wouldn't have met Han and Chewie, they wouldn't have rescued Princess Leia. None of it would have happened.
Chaos theory.
Eh?
The predictability of random events. The notion that reality as we know it, past, present, future, is in fact a mathematically predictable, preordained system.
So somewhere out there in the vastness of the unknown is an equation for predicting the future.
An equation so complex as to utterly defy any possibility of comprehension by even the most brilliant human mind. It's an equation nonetheless.
Oh my God.
What?
I've got some fucking Jaffa cakes in my coat pocket.
Oh, Mama!
Oh, Daddy, let's all play kabaddi.
You get them, Dave.
It's funny you should play that episode because I've actually got it on in the background with subtitles on. I've been watching it as I was doing stuff.
Well, that particular one?
Yeah, that episode literally ended 15 minutes ago as we started recording pretty much. And we're on the episode where they break Colin out of the pound. Yeah, Spaced came along at the perfect moment in my life when I was really heavily into, sci-fi, and I was understanding more about films and TV and the tropes and the jokes and the references. So I understood more complex humour. So you kind of mature as an audience, kind of member, not a member, but an audience of film and TV and music. And I was 1999, so it's just approaching first GCSE year. No, second GCSE year was over, wasn't it? Year of 2000, we finished our GCSEs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a show pretty much tailor-made for people like me. And I think I'd met you, Rich, the year before.
I think so, yes.
I knew of you, but it was GCSE. No, it was GCSE
you had
year,
rumours,
wasn't it?
Did you, Chris? You had rumours.
Rumours.
Did
And
some
then,
Altavista searches, and there I was. So.
Yeah, don't check your internet history. And I remember talking to Rich about this show called Spaced, and he turns around to me and says, I fucking loved that show, and I think a friendship was formed.
How do you remember this shit? Wow.
Mate,
okay.
my brain is... But Spaced came... We met in 1998 or 97.
Yeah.
Because we took graphics together at school, and that's how far back that goes, kids. But Spaced was just one of those shows where if it was on, I wouldn't go out with my mates. I'd go out afterwards. I'd meet them somewhere. I'd watch it first. Because it filled me with like euphoria and confidence, because it was this show that wasn't trashy, and the great thing was all of my mates didn't fucking know what it was, so it was mine. If that makes any sense, it was mine. None of my mates were into that kind of stuff. I was the weird nerdy kid in the group. It
was that little diamond in your pocket, basically, and no one knew about. So, which is always quite cool. So.
Me and my wife, we love Spaced, and we watched it about 2 or 3 times a year. We watch it through on a weekend sometimes, and the episodes are kind of all different themes and different tropes of film and TV, and this is Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg's and Jessica at that point Stevenson's demo reel for what they could do on limited budget and time just by a few lights, aiming the camera and stealing shots and stuff like that in locations. And it's glorious. Each episode is framed and shot like a mini film. And Edgar Wright has, obviously 20 years later, is now directing massive, major Hollywood movies and producing them. And if anyone's seen Last Night in Soho, that's
so good.
Perfect Edgar Wright movie. It's full of twists and turns. It's shot gorgeously. And obviously a few years after this, they'd go on to do Shaun of the Dead, and then the rest is history. That kind of career would form and blossom from there. But Spaced was one of those rare moments where they had an idea and they only wanted to do 2 series, and they followed through with it. And I think Channel 4 wanted Edgar to do a 3rd one, and he said, no, I'm going to tell our story and we're going to put a cap on it, and that was it. It's basically 6 hours of film school, is one way I've heard it described, and it's so accurate because, like I said, the episode I'm watching right now, they're busting Daisy's dog out, Colin, and it's all shot at night with one light source, and it looks gorgeous. I've got no audio on, and it looks amazing. As I've gotten older, this is where a comedy you could call it a sitcom, I suppose, or is it too clever and arty to be a sitcom? I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it seems cheap to call it a sitcom. It's difficult to know how to categorise it. which is...
You've got sitcoms, you've got Friends, and you've got whatever crap that was in this country, Coupling and Cold
Feet.
Yeah, there was sitcom dramas, but Spaced should be a category of its own because it's so complex and it's so layered that every year that passes, I become more snobby because my palette as a film watcher and film fan becomes more honed as the years go on. So I see more films that I haven't seen ever. So every time I watch Spaced, I understand a new joke. It gets better. And that makes a show so multi-layered and well-produced. It makes it timeless because, again, I'll watch a film that I've never seen before and then I'll watch Spaced and I go, oh shit, what did they... And I have to rewind it because I'm like, there it is, that's the joke. And I understand it for the first time in 20 years. And some of the references are so deep cut that you have to hit the internet and go through various message boards to understand the jokes. That's how complex it is. And I bonded with a couple of other friends as well over Spaced. Lindsay Goodbun, another good friend of mine and Rich's, she was heavily into Spaced at the same time as we were. And we would talk about it for hours. And I think you're part of that conversation, Rich, at school, where we would just talk about Spaced and everyone's looking at us going, the fuck are you guys what are you talking about?
Yeah, I think what's so beautiful about that show is it played to our nerdy sensibilities without being a nerdy show. It was kind of cool, and it's not saying it was cool and hip in the mainstream sense, but it felt cool and kind of hip to us. Yeah. And it came at a really important time, and I think it's still now quite relevant in that it was a show about young adults at a time where we were edging ever closer towards proper adulthood.
Yeah.
And we weren't wanting to accept the fact that we were growing up. We kind of wanted to shirk some of those responsibilities. We were still big kids. We fucked around. We didn't really want to go to work. We loved video games. Mm-hmm. We loved movies and talking about references. And Spaced was, because of that, unlike anything I'd seen up to that point.
Yeah.
And it just felt cathartic watching it. And it was funny, and obviously it was an introduction to some of my all-time favourite people now, like especially Simon Pegg, Nick Frost. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was just so different. And I can't even compare it to anything that's come since in 20 plus years. There's not anything that I can think, this is like the Spaced of, the
it's
noughties,
the kind of thing
the
that,
10s, the 20s.
Yeah, it's like you've got water cooler TV, haven't you? Like people talk about Friends or in the water cooler or in the coffee room at work. Spaced would be talked about like in the corner of the office during work hours by two people.
Yeah,
not
probably
all
just
of
actually
them.
At the desks, not even necessarily. Yeah,
and
just geeking out.
Do you think like it was the first kind of acceptance of nerds? I don't know, like in the 90s, like people who like science fiction and video games, they were just kind of geeks, weren't they? And geeks weren't cool, were we?
Well,
and
I think
we never
Spaced
really,
is...
And like Spaced was, I don't know, it felt like an acceptance, the first kind of acceptance that this was cool.
Spaced is what the Big Bang Theory wishes it was.
Spot on.
Right? And if no one understands that, watch Spaced and then watch the Big Bang Theory and then just watch Spaced again. It's, it's 12 episodes of just pure brilliance because it's not so much championing nerd culture because I didn't care what I was into at school. It didn't bother me. What Spaced was clever at doing and still is being so relevant for people struggling with introvert and extrovert, where I've been ever since a young age struggling with being an introvert and having bursts of extrovert energy and then disappearing, and I just wanted to sit on my own in my house rather than go out because I didn't have the emotional energy, I didn't have that connection and didn't want to do it. So it taps into that introvertness of people who you've got the introvert, you've got the extrovert, and you've got everyone just getting along together, even though they are so different from each other. They're all on the same page and understand each other as human beings. And it's great. I may be looking too far into it, but Tim being the struggling artist who wants this massive career, and in the first episode, in the first 12 or 15 minutes, the gag is set up, but the punchline's not delivered. You either understand it or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Where you've got people with these big dreams and want to do these things, and they can't because the system says they can't, and all they can do is struggle. Tim wants to be an artist. He's amazing. The character of Tim's an amazing artist and writer, but he's working in a comic shop because it's the closest thing he can get to a job that's what he wants to do. Daisy's struggling for employment because she doesn't know what she wants to do. And it's laying down that real life lesson that you can chase your dreams, but you have to be realistic about it. And even now, approaching 40, like Rich said...
Don't say that, Chris. Please don't say that.
The show is so relevant to even teenagers or 20-somethings today.
Yeah.
Because the same struggles are happening. You go to school, you do all these trainings, and then you realise, oh, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, and you try and escape, and you just have to get on. You just have to crack on. And it teaches you life lessons. It's getting very deep, this, about a sitcom, but it's not really a sitcom. It's more a study of just people, but done so cleverly. Like the party upstairs in like the second episode?
I think so, yeah.
And they're playing people in their mid-20s, and there's that joke where there's a party upstairs and they're holding a housewarming party, and they've got like, you know, nibbles and stuff and 80s music, but upstairs the daughter of the landlady is having a teenage party, and they're in awe of this teenager's party. People are coming past the door saying, is this where the party is? Like, no, it's upstairs. And then they put their sunglasses on and go upstairs, and they're like, they're all so young. And it's beautifully shot, because then they realise that, and you got Tim who's running away from adulthood. He's running so far away from being a grown-up that he goes upstairs and joins the party and he's having a great time. But then they snap back to reality, and it's the character moments as well. They're just so simply done. Like, it's so normal. And yet the antics that they get up to are so equally unrealistic, but you accept it. Like when, you know, Mike, the TA who steals a tank and tries to invade Paris. And then at the end, when they piss Marsha off and they try and get her back, and they go and steal another tank, and they play, you know, whatever I said, I didn't mean it, and she wants something bloody spectacular. And I think that's the episode that ends with Empire Strikes Back ending.
God, that was so beautiful.
And when I was watching it, I remember going to myself, nothing seemed familiar to me at all until it got to the van and they were speaking. I was like, that's Hans speaking to, what is going on? And they do the whole ending to The Empire Strikes Back, looking out the window. And the music.
Tim put his arm around Daisy. Just like, yeah. Oh,
and
God.
Mike yawning like Chewbacca in the pilot, in the driver's seat of the van.
Oh, it's genius.
And then the camera pans away from Daisy and Tim looking out the window. Not Daisy and Tim, it's oh God. But anyway, the whole, it's even the typeface and the music from Star Wars is licensed for the ending. There are so many brilliant moments like that, and there's a whole scene of them talking about a movie poster. But it's scripted in a way where it's a normal conversation happening between four people in a flat. But they're talking about a movie poster. I didn't know that joke existed. I found out about that about 10 years later, I think, on a post somewhere online, that they were talking about a movie poster. It escapes me what one it was, but they were just talking about a movie poster. And that is Edgar Wright in a nutshell.
It was those kind of things that drew me to Spaced.
Yeah.
Like I was trying to allude to, I'd never really seen a show, or never heard of a show that really embraced this kind of stuff before. I never saw Spaced on its original run. It was something I always heard of, always something that other people told me about, something that I'd always needed to see, something I always wanted to see. And I only saw it in like mid-2000s in the end, and I bought the DVD box set. And yeah, it was great. I mean, and I only went there to watch it because of all these because it made all these movie references, made all these video game references, it had all this kind of stuff that I was into, and they were going to refer to all this kind of stuff within their plots of the episodes. But like you've mentioned already, Chris, like everything else that space brought with it, I didn't expect to see, or I didn't expect to hit me like it did with the characterization and all the other stories that it was trying to tell you. It was really cool, like what you're just saying there about how it connected with you through, because being an introvert and everything else, that this show existed for that on its own. It's just beautiful, really.
And to say the show is very slightly autistic is an understatement. Because coming from someone who is obviously somewhere on that spectrum, I've never been officially, looked at or diagnosed or whatever, but the older I've gotten, my tendencies have become more obvious.
Yeah.
And that scared me to a point where I nearly had a breakdown a few years back, because I didn't understand where, for some reason, the older I've gotten, the more obvious they've become. But it is a show tailored to people like myself, obsessed with detail and minute structure. And that's what Spaced is. It is just this minutely structured masterpiece of a show. And again, Tim's love of the X-Files and Star Wars.
And his hatred of the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, got some issues to work out with George. It's like, oh, friend of yours. Yeah, and it just pans out and he's burning his Star Wars stuff after Phantom Menace. It's just like, wow. Like, that's a deep cut. And then when they go to sign on for... they go to sign on for the allowance, don't they?
Yeah.
And it's when Daisy comes back from Singapore. So she's trying to blag that she's not been away and she's been at home and been out of work. And Tim's sitting there. He said, had some few issues the past, was it past year? And he goes, and the woman at the office goes, Phantom Menace? Leave it with me. And then he gets a payout. It's like, it's just like, it's Edgar Wright basically going, yeah, you screwed that one, guys. And
it was like that whole scene in the comic shop where he just shouts his head off at that poor kid who's just coming for his comic.
And that to this day it's been a meme for 20 years. A jumped up poor excuse of a toy commercial.
Spend your 50p on something that's just like going off. Oh god!
And there was this scene where Tim's going absolutely irate and he's losing his cool over everything, and Daisy just says, Tim, chill out. It's been 12 months. You weren't there. And he's losing his show to Phantom Menace.
So was it Jar Jar Binks makes the Ewoks look like fucking Shaft?
Yes.
That's the best line.
Yeah.
It's the best line.
And it's silly jokes as well, like Brian, the artist, Mark Heap, is just... He's so much more capable than what they had him doing Friday Night Dinner, whatever that was about. Him as Brian, pain, anger, fear, aggression, this struggling artist who's into some weird stuff. And it's the start of the "you've got red on you" joke is in Spaced.
Oh god, yeah.
When Brian paints himself into a canvas to reference Rembrandt or something like that, and he comes up to Tim and says, "Can I borrow a tea bag?" He says, "Yes, Brian, as long as you bring it back." It's like, you can't borrow a tea bag, Brian. You can have a tea. And Tim turns round. He's playing Tomb Raider 3 or something, and drowning Lara Croft because he's in a drowning mood.
Yeah, we've all been there. That jumping off a cliff,
He turns round and goes, "You got some paint on you," and he's covered. He's just in this canvas. It's just, for some reason, that joke just works its way into Shaun of the Dead. I don't know why, but the levels of humour go so deep. It's a comedy I don't consider a laugh out loud comedy, where people would barely laugh. Yeah. It's a smirking comedy to me because I snobbishly understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I will smile or I will nod my head because I'm like, yeah, I see what you did there, guys. I see what you did. And I just wish them all major, absolute brilliant careers. Some of them have gone off the radar now, which is a shame.
How about, because I guess like Nick Frost has dropped off quite a bit recently, hasn't he? But,
yeah.
He's been a DJ for about 20 years on and off.
Really?
But he's got a big presence on Instagram, and I follow him quite a lot. But he's got massive now. He's John Goodman massive now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he's doing a lot of private, hire DJ stuff, and he's well for himself. And I think he does a few appearances in TV now and again in projects. That Wrestlers biopic a few years back, didn't he? He played the dad.
Oh yeah, he wasn't Fighting With My Family. He played the dad of the Knight family. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. He did. Yeah,
and Jessica Stevenson, she turns up now and again in certain things. I wish her and Simon and Edgar would get together again and do something, but
that would be lovely.
I think they've kind of all moved on. I mean, I just want them all to get together and do this like a nice little Christmas present of we've all got together. This is what we're going to do, and then just go, there it is. I would love it just to drop one day and say, this is what we've done. Please enjoy it.
That would be amazing.
But I remember in an interview, Edgar Wright said they didn't want to revisit Spaced because that was a part of their life that they documented in Spaced.
Yeah.
It was kind of partly biopic of them knowing each other from, Bristol University or Bath University or something that they went to.
But it's a shame. I wish they could still get together and do just a different project. Ever since the end of the Cornetto trilogy, they've not really done much together, and that's a bit of a shame, really.
But again, Edgar Wright's one of those filmmakers that he got away with it in the Cornetto trilogy by having his old castmates come in to do cameos here and there. But I think it would cheapen his movies now if one of them were to turn up. And I think they respect Edgar's distance for that understanding.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense to anyone.
Yeah.
Because you'll watch an Edgar Wright movie and fans of Edgar Wright like us would go, oh, fuck, shit, that's Simon Pegg or that's Nick Frost there. And then it would take you out of the movie. But it worked for the Cornetto trilogy by doing that.
Have you got a special or a favourite episode of Spaced?
Not particularly. I like all of them, but I love that final episode. All of them have their hallmark moments. Yes, a lot of it's dated. It's very extremely 1999, 2000 to a point where it's the most 1999, 2000 thing you've ever seen in your life. But I just love that final episode where it all comes together and it's that happily ever after ending, and it's great. They all make friends. Marsha's happier. Brian's happier. Tim and Daisy are together. And it's just a nice little ending episode with them travelling from the train station on top of Private Iron from the Robot Wars episode.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that was inevitable.
Oh, God, I forgot about that one.
The Robot Wars episode. Oh, just come on. That's just... Whoa, what are you doing? Oh, he's a bit weird. I get to be Philippa.
The whole role play they're doing was so...
You don't realise what they're doing, and you're like, what the hell?
It spoke to everyone at that time, but we all wanted to, have that conversation with Philippa.
Yeah. It's Private Iron, a war bastard. That Robot Wars
bastard was so good.
That Robot Wars episode is just a masterpiece of parody. It's just done so well.
That was fantastic.
Oh, war bastard.
I just think one of the things, it's not directly related to the show, but one of the things that still sticks out to me about Spaced was that it's one of the things I always think of when I think of the real heyday of DVD format and just how spoiled we were for special features and the way discs were presented. I remember having the set of series 1 and 2, and just it always been like a treasure trove of extras and gaff reels and little just extra snippets. It's something now that is obviously just a long lost art, and Space was like a gold standard. But a lot of British TV sets and comedy sets in general were quite generous when it came to that stuff, and Space was just like a revelation at the time.
Yeah, this is why in my hand right now I have the 3-disc Star Wars version.
I never had that one. I always had the one with the kind of caricatures on the front.
This has got the caricatures that was drawn by the artist who did Tim's work, and they're actually behind the discs.
Okay.
They're the caricatures, and they're behind each disc, so you take them out and you've got all the different seasons of them.
Nice.
On the paintball episode, and
nice.
It's a lovely set, and it just on the special features, outtakes, commentary, biographies, homage-o-meter.
Oh God, yeah.
So you've got the reference-o-meter almost, where it just kind of it teeters over with what they're talking about. Deleted scenes, commentaries, biographies, kids. Biographies used to come on discs. But yeah, I love it.
Man,
It's
so
great.
crazy.
Edgar Wright was originally sceptical of casting Frost in the role of Mike, as at the time Frost was a waiter with no prior acting experience. In fact, the character of Mike was born out of Frost making Simon Pegg laugh, and Wright later said that Frost was brilliant in the part. And I'm glad that they found him and got him in there.
Yeah, if memory serves, like they met. I think it was working at was it a TGI Fridays or something like that. And they would hang out, and Nick Frost would literally be like the Robin Williams of the group. He would literally just be the focal point. He would just keep people just going and talking shit. And then, I'm sure Edgar Wright said in one interview that when Nick Frost was in front of the camera, he was in costume, went to makeup, and he was like, "No, I can't do it." And then he just said, "Just walk up there and do it." And he said the first take he nailed because he was just himself. And I think that works when you haven't got an acting background. You just go ahead and you wing it and you be yourself and don't overthink it. And then it becomes the most natural thing you could ever put on camera.
And it worked.
Yeah.
Tim's first line of season 2, as far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a graphic artist, is a play on the classic opening line of Goodfellas, when Henry Hill, voiced and played by Ray Liotta, says, "For as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a gangster." Tim's hate against Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace reflects Simon Pegg's real-life dislike for the film at the time. Pegg later expressed deep regret over this stance towards the film, and he admitted that he felt terrible for mocking the character Jar Jar Binks, whose actor Ahmed Best was suffering from toxic fan response at the time.
And unfortunately, actors are still going through that now.
Yeah,
you toxic bunch of bastards.
On a much more higher level, I guess.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Well, great. Like I say, it's a time capsule, isn't it? And just so much. There's just so much space that we can't just cover it all in one.
No, it needs like
a
whole episode. Like I've struggled just to condense it down, but
I'm sure we can come back to it at some point in the new season. So, but yeah, awesome pick, Rich.
Yes,
it's time for your TV show of 1999, and that is.
My choice is Bits.
Hello and welcome back to Bits. Coming up, we'll be taking a look at what you should be spending your hard-earned cash on in this week's Shop Shelf. And we give you the do's and don'ts in our lesson on video gaming etiquette. But first, Alex takes a long, hard look at the gorgeous Shenmue. The 80s was an era of fashion victims and personal vendettas. If you weren't a legworm or casualty, then you were probably wearing stonewashed jeans and a leather jacket, being a punk and searching for ways to avenge your father's death. Now, documenting that strange decade of marching powder-fueled revenge and aggression is a phenomenal new game that's ushering in a whole new sensation. It's called Shenmue. Shenmue follows Ryo, a young 80s guy, as he pursues the bad man who knocked his kung fu paw sideways for an ornamental mirror. He's seeking the why behind his sudden orphanship. He's seeking revenge. No turning the other cheek here. This soul, lost somewhere between Pob and the sensitive new age reformation of the 90s, is seeing red.
Father! No! So that was 10 out of 10 for a clip choice, I must say.
Thank you.
I remember that segment well. Yeah, you know me so well, Jason.
Well, it's one of your favourite games, Rich, as I remember. So.
Oh, it's a masterpiece. So Bits, it is kind of not just the fact it came out in the same year as Chris's choice, but I think similar to Space, it just really speaks to that era, speaks to that time of our life, and it's not something that would ever be replicated again because it is so truly rooted in the late 90s. So Bits was just basically, it was a video games review show. It was hosted by 3 women, Alex Tosky, Emily Booth, and Emily Newton-Dunn. Simple format. Every week they would just look at new games, news. But what it did so differently is that whereas you had the likes of GamesMaster that had pretty much wrapped up the year before, it went head on against still what was deemed to be the image of gaming in terms of mainstream media. And it was still in the domain of the slightly nerdy, even though, yes, the audience was getting older now and games were being played by more adults, it still wasn't fully accepted. And whereas GamesMaster was quite still tongue-in-cheek and laddish, it still unapologetically kind of played to the nerd crowd. You'd still have the kids be on the show as contestants, you know, asking questions in the consultation zone. What Bits did is that it truly embraced what gaming had become once the PlayStation had come in and games were now being played in nightclubs. It was basically a gaming show for people that got in from the pub late and wanted to watch something. It was a Channel 4 show in every sense of the word. It was very much the same template as like The Word. Other stuff at that time that was just a lot more edgy and adult orientated. And what it did differently, instead of like being in a studio, it would film from different locations. So it might be at the girl's apartment. It might be even in a branch of a Virgin Megastores, rest in peace, down the pub or in the streets. And basically that's where they'd present their links, their reviews, their segments from. And it just was very kind of typical for the time, real messy, low budget, really like anarchic television. They're very in your face, loud, ahead of its time as well, having 3 women, and 2 of which were very much actually versed in video games, were proper experts. They weren't just like a face to lure in young men to watch. All very attractive, yes, but they knew their shit, and it showed. I mean, they're still working kind of in the industry now. I think Emily Newton-Dunn works for EA. I think Alex works in The Guardian doing like tech stuff. So they're very much still tied to the industry. But that's what was so nice about them, even though the show was very off the wall, kind of surreal, very laddish, in your face, loud, brash. They knew their stuff. They didn't mess around. It wasn't... It was kind of silly and immature, but it didn't kind of speak down to the audience. They very much felt like they were on your level, talking to you as a fan of games. And I think, yeah, having the 3 women, it was very ahead of the time. I mean, we were kind of still coming off the back of girl power, the real like riot girl movement, where a lot of the girls were becoming a lot more just, what's the best way to put this? Very much just in charge of themselves, you know, taking no shit, you know, fuck boys, you know, fries before guys kind of type girls. I love it. I love it, Tom. I love it. So, yeah, they were just that kind of prototypical kind of ladette, but it wasn't preachy. And nowadays, I'm sure people would flip out like, oh, this is kind of forcing an agenda. It's pushing women on us in a male space. Games are for everyone, even back in 1999. And his girls, his women, were just fantastic doing the job they did. The show was just very funny. Like I said, it was very low budget. It wore its budget on its sleeve. They were working with pounds and pennies, and they made it work. They used every single penny that they had to just make the show as fun as possible. I can't pretend it was anything novel in terms of format. It was your typical kind of gaming show. They did the links. They showed footage of games. They never went abroad like Don did with GamesMaster. They very much were rooted in, you know, one place. But their presentation styles, their skills, just their knowledge and their just madcap humour, it made the show in some ways for me. And it's kind of controversial, but I kind of actually think I prefer it a little bit more as a show to GamesMaster. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not got the same like nostalgia and cachet as like GamesMaster's got. I totally get that, but I think it just came more at a time where I felt at my most in tune and excited with video games. I mean, I think when GamesMaster ended, I wasn't fully... I must have had a PlayStation at the time, but the bug hadn't really bit until probably later, between like the N64 going into like sort of the Dreamcast, that kind of era, and Bits kind of picked up the baton right around that sweet spot. I mean, I still remember being up one night. I couldn't sleep. Got up, made myself a drink, and they had a preview of Sega Rally for the Dreamcast, and it was literally up the week before the console came out. I had the pre-order. The game was pre-ordered, and just seeing it on TV, seeing the footage, I was so excited. And you can't get that feeling anymore because everything's just there on YouTube, online. But seeing it on TV at the time at like 2 a.m, I was flipping out. I was so excited. And that's the magic of those kind of shows. And I think, again, it spoke to me at a time in my gaming life more than GamesMaster did.
Sorry, just to get this straight, was Bits shown at 2 a.m. in the morning?
Probably maybe a little bit earlier, but you were looking at about probably maybe about 1-ish, 1:30.
Wow.
It was proper the crowd that were coming home from the nightclubs, coming home late from the pub with a takeaway. It wasn't geared towards the teenagers or the
That was me at the time, and I can't remember watching this show.
Damn, you're missing out.
I'm the same. My weird relationship with gaming, I've never really sought out gaming shows, but until you mentioned it, Rich, I didn't even know it was a thing.
It was just such. I think it just came at a time when it was a real time capsule, especially when it came to Channel 4 TV shows. You had Vids as well, which was a very similar show with a very similar title, very similar production style, and did movies. It was like a couple of blokes in a video rental shop. Again, just the magic of 90s television. Just absolutely zero budget, almost negative budget. And I think it's just sorely missed. Everything's got so much sheen and polish, and I love that time where it was just 3 women, various locations.
In the very front room.
And there was just a real nice bond you had with them. I think the show lasted for about 5 series. And I used to just make a point of taping up for TV. I would get up on a Saturday morning. I never stayed up and watched it on the Friday night if I could help it. I never went out, so I didn't appeal to the audience, and I never came home to watch bits. I was very much in bed at 10:30, 11 because I was a boring bastard as much then as I am now. But yeah, I used to set the old Video Plus timer, and I was very excited on a Saturday morning when I knew there was another episode.
All very sad when Video Plus didn't work and it didn't tape it.
Yeah, I won't lie.
I never used it out of that exact principle, Jason.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
manual timer for the win. Yeah.
I would set alarms to record certain films and stuff I wanted to watch. I wouldn't rely on Video Plus because I've been caught out many times before. So,
It's kind of like the successor to GamesMaster, isn't it? Because I think
it came the following year, basically. Yeah.
I kind of like the reversal that they went with this, because obviously GamesMaster, especially in the last few series, it was very laddish, very blokey. Dom had his mates on set most of the time. It was run by his friends and the people that he was close by, and it was all very blokey, very laddish. And then all of a sudden, the successor with Bits came in, was shown much later at night, but with 3 women, and it was much more just about the games and not about the challenges. And I kind of like that reversal that they did with that. How can we follow GamesMaster and still continue the video game coverage that people seem to really like on our channel? And I kind of like the way that they went with that.
It was a nice soft kind of evolution, I think, of GamesMaster, and that GamesMaster, it was still presented very much towards that niche audience, but it had enough laddish quality about it. Dom had that real kind of wink and a nod where he was very much embracing the niche, the geeky image that gaming still had, but was just trying to nudge it a little bit further into being accepted. Whereas I think by the time Bits came out, or GamesMaster had ended and Bits came to be, it was that lot more accepted. I think some of the people that were watching GamesMaster, at least some of the older fans, they were now very much, it sounds terrible, but they were getting into alcohol, getting more into women as well, and I think it appealed more to that. It scratched both those itches. It was on at a time where they dabbling in said alcohol and women would come home from the pub in their bed sit at their parents' house if they still lived with their parents, and there was Bits.
Yep.
And I still, even now, and this is in 1999, I love the fact that it was the three women, but they weren't just furniture to appeal to what some TV exec thought blokes, because I think even then it was very much considered, it's a guy thing, it's a boy thing. But it wasn't.
They didn't do the Big Breakfast, what Big Breakfast did in this year by signing up Kelly Brook.
Exactly. Yeah, they weren't a prop. They were gamers. At least 2 and 3 were. Even if there was anything kind of sexualized jokes, it was very much of their doing. It was their whole, like, they had their own agency on what they were doing. It was played for laughs. It was never cheap or crass or exploitative shit like that, which bothers me massively. And I just, again, it shows in 1999, whereas nowadays people would be like, it would be accepted or would be considered as, probably a show made by social justice warriors or something to appeal to, people that want equality. You've got to have 3 women and they've got to be, treated with respect. It's like, well, they were doing it in 1999 and it worked. It was so good. Yeah. And I miss that show massively. I wish there was still an equivalent, but gaming doesn't have a place on TV anymore. It's one of those things that is a bygone era. And I think Bits was the last example of that. I mean, Alex did go on to do Thumb Bandits with Ian Lee once Bits had finished. That lasted all of like 5 minutes. It never really left any impression whatsoever.
Yeah, and it's a shame, really. Bits kind of passed me by because I was one of those said people that were going out clubbing. Now, in 1999, I was 21. So I was going out clubbing with my friends and getting drunk. And I think this is why I missed some of this stuff at this time of my life, because I was too busy just going out and drinking and whatever not you. But yeah, I don't, with Bits being at that time of night, I'm really surprised I didn't catch it at some point. One other thought I had about Bits was the fact that because it was shown so late at night, I'm still quite impressed that they got video game companies to agree to show footage or get them to play games or kind of cover their games on a program that was shown so late at night on telly.
Yeah. It is hidden away, but I like the fact that it got to be what it wanted to be because of that time slot. It wouldn't have ever been a thing in prime time. It was never like overtly, politically incorrect or crass, but it had enough like edginess into it that probably would make Dom blush, to be fair. And it was just happened to be it was 3 women doing it, and I think it's just so much more fun and so quintessentially 90s as well. Like 3 women wearing chunky boots and wearing like day glow belly tops, and it was just so 90s.
I had a great time like looking at clips on YouTube, trying to find the one to put on the show, and it was a lot of fun just watching them do their stuff. Just made me regret not seeing it even more when it was first shown. But
yeah. Emily Newton-Dunn and Alex Krotowski, they're not really in the public eye anymore, but if you want to see Emily Booth, she still does stuff on the horror channel. So there you go, see some bits on
some bits on the horror channel.
Yeah.
Well, it is quite funny the way you explained it. Is weirdly kind of not poignant's the word, but it's the kind of show that you would see Tim Bisley or Ed Wright watching when they got home from said clubs and pubs.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's a grown-up thing that grown-up gamers and people with that interest would watch when they get in. Yeah. And it's quite weird. I'd never really looked into it, and I'm going to have to, actually, because
it was never try hard. It was never try hard. It was never like, in your face, gamers. It didn't feel like it was edgy or anarchic by committee television. It was... These 3 women were like in charge of this shit. They were putting it together, making it their own baby, and just presenting it onto TV. And it felt honest and real. And they felt like 3 like women you were having a laugh with down the pub. And that's you can't bottle that stuff. It's organic. It happens or it doesn't. And they did it for 5 years. And it was actually 3 years. It was 5 seasons across 3 years, which is a bit of a mind trip, but. I don't know if Channel 4 even have it on like streaming or anything. I doubt it, but I wish they did. It's a shame, but
yeah, Probably one of those shows that just go into obscurity, or is already there, I guess. So. But it's a shame. Preservation and all that. Come on, bring it back to DVD.
Yeah, please.
Okay, well, let's move on to our last pick for this episode, and that's obviously my pick. And the only TV show left is Red Dwarf.
For the last 4 years, you have been engaged in the total immersion video game, Red Dwarf. As with all role-playing adventures, you will experience a certain amount of disorientation on leaving the game. It will be several minutes before your real-life memories return, so in the meantime, please disengage the game-playing machinery and relax until an attendant is free to answer any of your questions. On behalf of Leisure World International, may we be the first to say, welcome back to reality.
This is a very, very bad dream, right?
I'm not a hologram.
I'm half human. What the hell's happened to my teeth? I can open beer bottles with my overbite.
Right, lads. How you feeling? Bit wonky? Perfectly normal. We'll be right as rain in 20 minutes. So, if you could just move through to the recuperation lounge, I can get things ready for the next lot.
The next lot?
There's a very popular game, it's Red Dwarf. It's got a 2-year waiting list.
So I was kind of a bit bummed that we started in 1990 with What's Wrong with Wolfie in some ways, because I always wanted to talk about Red Dwarf, because I think it's one of the first experiences that I ever had science fiction. You
and me both. I've got a lot of good things to say about Red Dwarf. Glad you picked it.
Yeah. So when it came to 1999, there was nothing really that debuted in this year that really I hold special or dear to me. I tried to get spaced out of Chris, but he just wouldn't budge. He's like, nope, Spaced is mine. You're not having it.
Sorry.
So I did a 96 TV show. I went back and I looked at the shows that were ending this year, and Red Dwarf, its original run, ended in this year. So I was like, awesome. This is my opportunity to get to talk about Red Dwarf. So here we are. And like my first earliest memories of this show was kind of like my brother watching Red Dwarf, and I used to just catch pieces here and there about it, and it looked quite intriguing. And then it was, for a couple, 2 or 3 years later, and I was like, what was that program that he was watching? I remember it looking quite interesting. So I caught reruns, or I can't remember how I got to watch it, but I did start watching it and catching the latest series that were being shown on BBC Two, and it just clicked. It just got its claws into me straight away, and I didn't want to let go because it was just brilliant. And I guess in some ways, with how Chris was talking about Spaced, is Red Dwarf to me because of everything that they did in that show, especially in that first six series, because they did the impossible in some ways. They kind of managed to meld interesting, well-told science fiction stories, but within a British comedy. And, I think someone in BBC or whatever said that wouldn't work. We do not want to commission the show because this mesh of these genres is not going to work. But they showed that it did, and I'm really grateful, really happy that they managed to get this TV show made because it's just brilliant. Like the 4 main characters, so completely different, but so relatable in all their different traits and ways. And the idea of bringing back this hologram in series 1, because they had this big accident, they wiped humankind. They're in deep space. Lister's literally on his own on this big massive ship. So Holly, the ship's computer, wants to bring someone back from the crew to keep Lister happy, keep him company. And so they bring back the one person that he completely hates. in Arnold Rimmer. But it was brilliant because they could bounce off each other. They had that kind of slight hatred for each other, but also, like, you could see as the series progressed, like, they did have that kind of background love for each other as well. It turned into like a, I don't know, brotherly kind of relationship, and I think that's the other great thing about Red Dwarf was the way in which they brought the characters along for the ride, and they managed to progress them in some ways, and their relationships with each other. But then on the other side, you just had these great science fiction stories that were just brilliant, like in that clip we just heard from Back to Reality, where they're fighting a despair squid. They find out that the ink that the squid ejects gives these people despair, and in the end makes them want to kill themselves. And then all of a sudden we see this game over screen because they crash Starbug into a cliff or something, so it blows up, they all die, and then we find out that it's all just a video game, that they've just been playing this video game for the last 4 years, they've just all died, and that's it. That they're back to reality. And what a brilliant story to try and tell in a comedy British sitcom. It was just and then like the Brummy worker kind of comes in and kind of like then it's going, oh, did you do this? Did you get Kachansky? This is going, no. He goes, what? But that was the main aim for Lister, to get together with Kachansky. And and like going back to Rimmer and going, oh, did you find the captain's log thing that was embedded in this? I can't remember what it was now or whatever. And it told you the secrets of the character and made you become this and that and the other. And it's like, no, I didn't find that out when this, that and the other. And then, of course, just the brilliant creation of Dwayne Dibley that we heard just there.
God.
With the teeth, but that showed the brilliance, I think, and that was one of the reasons why I chose that clip. It showed the brilliance between the two of the show, between the comedy and the science fiction, and like there was some other. It's just really just some great ideas that they brought to the show, and like some of my favourite shows are in Series 5, where you have that show Back to Reality and Quarantine.
Quarantine, Mr. Fibble.
Yeah, Rimmer.
Mr. Fibble is very angry.
Always wearing that Gingham kind of like maid outfit with those two wild ponytails.
Pigtails, everything, and a little bonnet.
And it's just brilliant, but it was so clever because, like, Rimmer had picked up a holographic infection through this other hologram that was like going crazy, and like the whole basis of that show was like Christen was constantly throwing space directives at Rimmer and why they can't do this and why they can't do that, and then they make Holly give Rimmer a copy of the space directives. And then, obviously, Rimmer turns the tables and throws all these space directives at them and puts them in quarantine, which is great because it's like, come on. They put them all in quarantine and like, come on, we can do this. We can do 75 days together in this small room, just the three of us. Come on, we're the boys from the Dwarf and all this and that. And then it was like cut 5 days later and they've all beat the crap out of each other. So, And then there was another one. I'm not sure if it was in this series actually or not, but obviously Polymorph. Where
Dwayne Dibley comes back, isn't it?
Well, I think this was the one where an alien comes aboard Red Dwarf, but it's like a shapeshifter. So it shapes into obviously lots of different things, like a ball, rabbits, and this, that, and the other. And obviously
a thermos.
Oh, God.
And then you obviously have that iconic scene where it had morphed itself into Lister's boxer shorts. And then, like, Rimmer walks in on Crichton trying to take these boxer shorts that are shrinking on Lister. It just great. And like, another one that sticks in my brain to this day is Backwards.
I'm glad you mentioned Backwards. That is just an art form
because it's still, especially for the time it was shown, it was really cleverly done. And this one was based on they thought they found Earth. They thought they were back, and they go to the surface just to find out that everything is backwards. It's not London, it's Nodnall.
Yeah.
And like everyone speaks backwards. Everyone's doing things backwards.
Yeah.
So like they're in a cafe, and they're sitting there, and then the worker comes over and then chucks a load of rubbish on the table. Kind of gives it all a wipe, and then like I don't know, like they cut to a woman drinking some tea, but obviously the tea's coming out of her into the cup,
and then the waiter takes the cup away or something.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff. It's just brilliant.
But just by taking it a step further, by them going, we could monopolise on this, and then they earn a fortune by doing things
the normal.
Yeah. And they're all loving it. All these people are loving it, that they're doing normal things. They're drinking drink and they're eating food.
Yeah, and that it just shows the brilliance of the show in that sense, you know. And like you have Lister, the person you can relate to the most, you know, the beer drinking, curry lover, kind of most down to earth guy there. You've got Kat, who came from the cat that Lister had on the original Red Dwarf series, and the accident happened and it kind of morphed into this human, like they had the whole society, didn't there? There was this
it was
whole,
an offshoot of Lister's cat.
Yeah,
that was pregnant at the time, and then was it 3.5 million years? Red Dwarf.
That's right. Yeah. So
Lister was in stasis, so 3.5 million years, and the cat evolved into human form, played beautifully by Danny John Jules.
Yeah.
Oh God, that man is just beautiful in that.
Crichton, who, you know, they find on a ship, who he thinks is still serving his masters, when they're all just like three skeletons. And he can't see a problem with this, you know.
Because his programming says he must serve his masters, regardless if they're dead.
And I think he kind of goes on the biggest, like, journey of, like, progression. Like, you know, because Lister's trying to get him to break his programming. He's trying to get him to swear. He's trying to get him to do all this kind of stuff. And, like, it's so funny seeing Crichton trying to say a swear word, because he's like, kind of
Smeek.
Yeah.
I remember.
And then,
dear.
and of course you've got Chris Barry, who plays Rimmer. Just, I don't know, like, and I guess he goes on quite a story as well. You know, you learn a lot about him and why he is the way that he is through his parents and his kind of upbringing he had with his siblings and this, that, and the other. And, you know, you can kind of like feel a little bit more sorry for him in some ways because of the kind of person he is, because of the background that he came from. But then, you know, they still twist it, and they gave us Ace Rimmer.
Yeah,
fantastic.
The alternate reality version, isn't it?
Yeah.
Smoke me a kipper. I'll be back for breakfast.
Beautiful. Yeah. I don't really know what else to say about it, because it's just a special show for me because of those reasons. It kind of, like I say at the beginning, it kind of introduced me to science fiction. It got me interested in it to the point that it made me want to investigate other TV shows in that genre. And so without Red Dwarf, I don't think I would have found Star Trek, and I wouldn't have found other films and shows in that genre. So I think that's why Red Dwarf holds a big place in my heart. And I was kind of glad that it got continued with Dave Channel.
Yeah.
And that was kind of beautifully surreal that, you know, it was Dave that picked up and managed to pick up the show and release new episodes, obviously because Dave Lister. But I think they did a good job with those shows, and the film Promised Land was another great little, just great.
The high concept science fiction ideas told in the most irreverent sitcom setting was just genius. And the canned laughter works because the canned laughter is part of the jokes. It's supposed to be silly. It's supposed to have that stupid canned laughter because it just works that way. It's the show's designed to be like that. And even just the name of the character, A. Rimmer, is just, you know, we all know what a rimmer is. It's just a suck-up. It's just a suck-up to the management, isn't it? Oh, you're rimming, are you? And they name the character that, and it's just genius. Absolutely brilliant. But weirdly with Arnold Rimmer, like, he's such a complex person, and the collection of 20th century telegraph pole photographs is like the most boring of boring interest you could ever imagine. But Chris Barry delivers it in such a way where you actually almost would be interested in seeing his collection. But the show itself just landed so well. Every single episode was just so clever. And when you find out like where Lister came from underneath a pool table, and then they do that whole time travel shenanigans. It's like it's a temporal headache, but it's so brilliantly done.
I think there was one time travel episode they did where they had a time machine and they got it to work. And so they said, where should we go? And they said, why don't we go to the 14th century? And they decide, okay, that's cool. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to the 14th century. So they key it all into the machine, and you see all the graphics, and they go vroom, vroom. And then they go, well, it looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
And they're like, I think it was quiet, and they went, well, yes, because it would look exactly the same because we're still 3 million miles away from Earth. But instead of being in our time, we're now 3 million years away from Earth in the 14th century. Yeah. So, and they're like, oh, well, that was a waste of time, or, and then they was like, put it to bed and cracked on.
It's just gags like that, like... I always remember the most English gag they've ever done is when they're on Starbug and Rimmer says, right, okay, Crichton, switch your ship to red alert. And Crichton turns around and says, are you sure, sir? Because that does mean changing the bulb. It's the most British joke ever. You can't switch your ship to red alert because you've got to change the bulb. It's just genius. And it's just Robert Llewellyn, sorry, but his delivery is just perfect every single time. And the episode where Crichton becomes human.
Yeah, that was cool. Shows
Polaroids to the crew. And it's like a dozen Polaroids. Is this normal, sir? Yeah, Red Dwarf, just brilliant.
And I think it was really great that they had a computer as well, but they didn't just have the voice. They had a face for that computer.
Oh, Norman Lovett. Oh, my God.
I think, I think...
Right, dudes.
Honestly, it's so mad. Like, Red Dwarf was always like kind of in my orbit, but I never really ever got into it, which maybe is bad. I know I've watched a fair share of episodes, but I don't know what it was. Why something didn't fully click with me, where I just flat out became a fan, and it's a weird one.
Yeah, it does seem a bit, because it seems right up your street, to be honest.
Yeah.
And like even where we were talking just there about Holly, and he had a specific episode in, I'm not sure which series it was now, but it was Queeg, where
that's the first or second series.
I think it might be the second series,
where he pranks the entire crew. Spoilers ahead, guys.
I know, and that was the brilliance, though, wasn't it? It was like, oh, I've upgraded myself, and we're
there was a software subroutine or something that pre-installed itself.
Yeah, yes, Holly was replaced by this other actor, and like he was just complete douche.
It was basically a militant black man as a computer that ran the crew through everything, like training programs, getting them ready for stuff, punishing them, and
and then right at the end, like the normal Holly comes back and was like, "All right, mates, yeah, that was a joke. That was
it was me all along." Just sitting up while you could push him because he was bored.
That is brilliant reveal. Yeah, I like that a lot.
The talkie toaster.
The talking toaster.
Talkie toaster. Anyone want some toast?
No. Don't want any toast. Can you sing the title theme, Chris?
I can pretty much know the words, but I'm not going to sing it.
Don't enable him.
Why not?
Well, it's cold outside, There's no
kind of
atmosphere. We're all alone, more or less.
Let me fly.
Far away from here. Fun. In the sun.
I think when they decided in Series 7 to get rid of the audience, and they changed the way they filmed it, I believe, that... Was it 7 or 8? I'm not sure. But it was one of the later series, and they made these changes, and I think that's when it started to not work, because they tried to turn it into something that it wasn't.
That's what I said, when the canned laughter is part of the joke, and when you remove part of the joke, it's weird. It feels like it's taking itself too seriously, and that's what happened. Was it the later seasons where they're on that prison ship, aren't they? Is it a prison ship or a prison cell for like 2 seasons?
They did go on a Prison 1, and I think that was one of the ones that I kind of liked. It was kind of going back more towards where it used to be, but it was still not quite right. But I think it might have been one of the other where they were still not, on Red Dwarf, whatever, but it just wasn't.
Yeah, because they tried.
Quite right.
They brought the crew back, didn't they? The nanites that regenerated Red Dwarf.
Yeah,
and the jokes were clever, but the whole crew came back, and it kind of ruined that dynamic. There was too many people in the cast at that point where it only worked with the 4 of them, but by having it populated with loads of cast regulars, it just, I think it didn't hurt it a bit. There was just too much going on.
Yeah, and like we've been used to it just being the 4 of them for so long that you felt a bit alienated, I guess, that there was all these new people. I'm quite glad when Dave did pick it up and bring it back that they realised that, and that they took it back to where it should be, with just the 4 main characters, even if they did take them to Coronation Street. But
that was part of Red Dwarf's humour, was that was down to earth, wasn't it? That little mini series they did, like a litmus test of, is there an audience still for this? It did work.
Yeah,
but when
definitely.
when they brought it back like series proper, it did work. I haven't seen the last 2 seasons, I believe, that they did. I just haven't got around to it, to be honest. But yeah, it's just a great little show. And I always remember a couple of good gags when they're in the prison, where Lister's doing Morse code through the piping. And it's a whole 5-minute scene setting up this gag, and they're tapping Morse code. And Rimmer's like, "Oh, Lister, did you find out what was her?" "No, wrong number." And she's like, "What the hell?" Like, and signing up for the Canaries when he thinks it's like a a militia group of people, and it's not. It's the basically Operation Human Shield, where they're the Canaries that go into the battle zone to die, so the people above them don't. But Lister's that innocent. And didn't Norman Lovett come back last year or the year before?
Yeah, he did come back for a couple.
Holly was like, I don't know why Holly was absent. I think Norman Lovett left to do his own show, and then they recast with what's her name?
Hattie Haybridge.
Hetty Haybridge, that's it. And then when Red Dwarf came back, Holly was offline, and for some reason wasn't online. And all of a sudden, that's the different realities where Rimmer's hopping between the different realities, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
And Holly's online in a few of them, and he just says, "All right, Arnold." And I love it because you can see Chris Barry's loving his face seeing Norman Lovett on the screen for the first time in probably 20 years.
Yeah. I think with Norman, it was down to him being in Edinburgh at the time of Series 3. Obviously, they were down in London or whatever, but he wouldn't come down for the script readings or whatever it was, or the filming, or I don't know what it was. It was something along those lines, and I think he wanted more money, and they just went there. So
I thought he got his own sitcom show, didn't he, as well? Which
I'm 50% sure that's what it was, but
something
I
like
could
that.
be
But
wrong. But
the masterstroke of doing the whole Holly thing was most of it was filmed in real time on set. So Norman was off stage with like a black turtleneck on a black velvet black screen, rear screen. So all of his lines were delivered at the same time as all the others. So they would have a full free flow conversation. If I remember rightly, they filmed it and they synchronized the camera shutter to the old CRT TVs that were the monitors.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have that shimmering look. So by syncing up the shutter speed with the refresh rate on the CRT TVs, you don't get that weird line movement that you get. And it was just great by doing it in real time. It added that extra bit of tactile realness to the whole thing.
That did remind me, like sometimes they used to put Holly on a CRT and then put the CRT on a trolley and then have the scutters kind of push him about.
That was a great gag. You're thinking Red Dwarf's supposed to take place in the future, but here comes a school TV on a trolley with
Brilliant stuff.
And that was the masterstroke in the new ones, wasn't it? Where don't they have to reboot Holly? And they take the mick out of the early Red Dwarf, because obviously they're still using video cassettes and floppy disks in the original Red Dwarf, aren't they?
Yeah.
So by honouring that, they have to reboot Holly. But Lister says it's a high capacity diskette. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Well, and they get Holly's backup. And it's a floppy disk drive the size of a doorway. Am I misremembering that?
The newer ones haven't stayed in my brain as much as the older ones, so I can't...
Sure I saw it on YouTube or something, because I haven't watched many of the new ones. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they boot Holly up with this massive out-of-scale floppy disk.
It sounds like something they would do.
Yeah, two of them to carry it and push it into this floppy disk drive.
Yeah, but yeah, no, thank you to Rob Grant and Doug Naylor for creating this TV show. It's just a very special show. Robert Llewellyn uses a Canadian accent to play Crichton, and he considered using a Swedish or an American accent before settling on Canadian. Llewellyn discovered the accent while spending time in Vancouver, British Columbia, which he describes as being a cross between Scottish and American, which is quite interesting. I didn't really know why he had that accent, but...
This is a really interesting choice, but I suppose it makes the android character more androidish by not being British like the rest of them. I don't know. That's proper method stuff, that, isn't it?
And according to an interview with Patrick Stewart, the first time he saw the programme, he thought it was a rip-off of Star Trek The Next Generation and was just about to call his lawyer. This may be hyperbole or sarcasm on Stewart's part, but as he continued watching, he became a fan of the show.
I did not know that.
And according to Craig Charles, because the cast had very little acting experience prior to the first series, the characters are mostly based on their real personality. Charles states that he is slovenly in real life. Danny John Jules really does own a large amount of clothes, and Robert Llewellyn really is neat and carries a lot of guilt. The only similarity that Chris Barry has to Rimmer is his interest in cars.
I didn't know about the Patrick Stewart thing. That's really weird. How did I not come across that?
So there you go. There's our picks for TV shows of 1999, and a lovely bunch they are too. Please, if you haven't ever checked out some of these shows, then we definitely urge you to go and do so, because they're really like a big time capsule for the time period. That's your lot for this one. Thank you as always to everyone for joining us, and if you have enjoyed the pod and would like to support us, then we do have a coffee page where you can donate to the show starting from £1. A massive thank you to all who have done so. You're all legends. And if that is not right for you right now, you can also support us by just giving us a review or rating on Apple or Spotify, or sharing our social media posts. You can find the links on our website. Speaking of the website, go and check it out at thewolfiepod.com, please. It is home to all our links, back catalogue of episodes, articles, and much more. Chaps, time to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Farewell.
My name has been Jason. Dom, it's over to you.
Well, that's it for another episode of What's Wrong with Wolfie. The boys are off now to hit the roulette table with Patricia Routledge. See you later.
What's wrong with Wolfie? I can hear him barking.